Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Dr. Regina Hernandez Show. I am Dr. Regina Hernandez, and the purpose of this podcast is to provide a platform to support teachers and engage community members in authentic dialogue about public education. This episode is about the Whole Being Integrative Approach to teaching and learning in classroom curriculums. I have Miss Bethany Sanchez, an expert on this subject matter. Miss Bethany Sanchez is an administrator and founder of Helping Hearts Academy in Lafayette, Louisiana. She is a Kundalini master, a therapist, and founder of the Tribe Collective. Her personal and professional ventures share the common theme of the whole being integrative approach to teaching and learning. It is my pleasure to have Ms. Sanchez share some of her points of interest in education.
I think a byproduct of our educational system, just with the level of institutionalism and non-individuation, is that you have a lot of kids, a lot of people, for 5-6 generations now that are it's like a learned helplessness in a lot of ways. It's I can only fulfill one task at one intensity for one period of time. And I really think that, looking back on our own formative years together in high school, the jobs that we worked, the ways that we worked, and since then, the way that we've done things, I just feel like we were, granddaughters of immigrants, and I feel like our fathers, even though they were really different, they still have that immigrant mentality. My father's family were sharecroppers, and his dad had actually come over when he was really, really, really young. So we were taught that, you're grateful for work, you're grateful for the opportunity, and that you basically fulfill any function that you're asked to fulfill. So the paradigm shift, I think, has been that, instead of I'm paying you for your energy and your expertise and your, passion and execution, it's like the system has really narrowly defined educational academic roles and narrowly defined work roles related to those roles. And I think that it creates a culture of non-productivity because you don't have people that are capable of being diverse in the sense that, they can think on their feet and they can fill the container with energy in a way that's required and switch up an activity, generative learning and generative outcome-based goals. I just think so in my classroom, I'm really trying to tear down the walls that exist between the modes of thinking and create knowledge workers. Kids that, because their education has been generative and multisensory and interactive and really inquiry-based, thought-based, that it leads to a type of thinker that's, a lot more versatile, approaches problems and challenges with a really wide lens, a really wide spectrum of, attacking it from multiple angles, cross-pollinating with, different types of people, different types of data, different types of knowledge, different types of skill, instead of just being that narrow focused. I feel like the narrowing of the focus is definitely pineal, and I think that it's encouraged by the sit down and work on this independently in a huge classroom type of learning that we've kind of all been, in the system at least, in public education, forced into just by huge numbers in the classroom and, the inability to be individuated and to teach on an individualized generative basis. So I think it's dangerous for the perception and abilities of your kid that is especially looking to transition into the workforce at a young age.
I agree with you that I can see that's happened in public education, that mindset. I think it's just teaching to the test.
Right.
It's just a test, the assessment. Get the kid to perform. Let's not do project-centered learning where that inquiry and where you do have to think on your feet for the team to reach that shared goal.
Exactly. And then what happens when you're solo out there in the workforce, or you're trying to accomplish relationships or accomplish interactions or transactions? What happens? You don't have that context, so you're lost. You're flailing because you've never been taught how to be a conduit for information. You're always part of a system. And to me, I mean, you can see where that would lead to some real gaps in the ability to be a hyper processor, the ability to be, somebody who can navigate the ups and downs, the flux of life effectively, because you've never been, when you teach to a test, when you teach students to a test and you're giving them rote information, they're not using the part of their brains that have to solve problems. They're not using the part of their brains that have to, they're all in the neofrontal. They're not in the, they're not in the amygdala. They're not in the cerebellum. They're not in the limbic. They're just simply being exposed to static, unchanging, modes of data. And they're not asked to create anything. They're not asked to co-create. They're not asked to figure out systems. They're not asked to adhere to higher level thinking at all.
Right.
And it's interesting because I always say in this field that the pathology defines a lot of the gaps in the system. So like autism, ADHD, PTSD, twice exceptional, shows us many ways in which our neuroscience is not being properly applied in teaching. And this, for me, the relational aspect is a huge, huge area of social skills weakness because we're not teaching it. It doesn't have anything to do with the test, so we don't teach it. We don't teach how to have appropriate transactional professional relationships with peers and customers and clients and mentors. It's just something that's not done.
It sounds like it matches well with that social emotional wellness for everyone in order to have those ideal working relationships, professional relationships, personal relationships, and it's problem solving. It's empathy. It's like
empathy. Yes, exactly.
Putting yourself in another person's point of view in order to persuade, in order to sell, or to get to achieve goals. Or and that's higher level thinking.
It is. And if you think about, even the Greek paradigm, pathos, logos, and ethos, when you're trying to teach them the words and the empathy and the trust and the feeling, if we cut out the pathos and the ethos in favor of simply the logos, then it's not a whole human approach. And I just don't think, as an educator and a therapist and a coach, I don't think that that's going to work anymore. I don't think that paradigm can hold any more water. I think that we've seen it collapse, we've seen it break, and I think that we are now seeing the outcome of 4, 5, 6 generations of students that do not have any ability to properly receive or contain or perpetuate empathy and compassion and perspective, multiple perspectives. And I think it's reflected in a lot of the behaviors and the trends and the issues that we're having emotionally and neurologically, cognitively, and even getting into some issues that you're having with young adults and people in their early 30s, mid 30s.
Yeah.
The disconnect, the isolation that goes along with the inability to have, as you said, really successful relationships. And I think we're all guilty in education of still, even at this point in the game, knowing what we know. Even after my extensive training with positive psychology with Tal Ben Shahar, with empathy, with mindfulness, it's still hard for me to, look at the metrics in my own classrooms and programs and say, I need to put the emphasis on social and emotional wellness that we put on core subjects. Mm-hmm. It's just, we're so programmed. Even creating this new paradigm that's based on the positive psychology model, the cellular model, I still struggle with, do I have my metrics properly balanced for, the core learning and the rigor and the rubric, and I have to really still catch myself. Wellness is just as important. It's just as vital. Mindfulness, awareness, empathy, compassion, prototypical relationships, learning about, multiple diversity issues that still face us, getting into the thick of it. I have to remind myself daily that it's just as vital, that it should be 50-50. And it's so funny because I think that until schools really see the truth of the balanced, holistic, whole human approach on a multisensory level, with mindfulness incorporated into the entire day, I don't know that we'll have a successful system. And I've become such an advocate and such a proponent for it because I've seen it change children's lives.
Yes.
And I've seen it, I don't want to say anything that sounds Joan of Arc, dangerous, but I've seen it ameliorate and alleviate some of the very worst symptoms and comorbidities of these cognitive, behavioral, neurological disorders.
Thank you, Bethany, for discussing the Whole Being Integrative Approach to teaching and learning. Your talking points connecting the neuroscience perspective to the social and emotional perspective in the different contexts, such as education, personal, and professional, help illustrate your theory of a new paradigm of teaching and learning. Thank you all for listening and taking the time to join us. You can send topic suggestions to reginahernandezconsulting@gmail.com, and feel free to check out my website at www.reginahernandezconsulting.com to learn more about my services as a teacher coach and education consultant. Also, feel free to leave feedback and subscribe. Love you for listening. Bye.